Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Matt.
And this is Publish and Prosper,
where publishing, e-commerce, and marketing collide.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Publish and Prosper. In this episode, I get to do something that I really love doing and haven't had the opportunity to do for a while, and that is interview an author. Because officially, as of, what date did you publish this?
Halloween.
Officially, as of Halloween 2025, my co-host is a published author.
Yep.
How's it feel?
The same. No. I don't know how to answer that. Are we already starting? Because
you don't have to.
That actually feels like a hard question. How does it feel to be a published author? I guess in all honesty, it's pretty cool. I did go and update like some of my stuff, social media and LinkedIn, and added author next to podcaster and marketer and all around idiot. And it is pretty cool to be able to say that you are a published author. Yeah. So I guess in a way it does feel a little bit different. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad.
What are you laughing at?
I'm sure that'll only keep going. I had not actually read your about the author on the back cover.
So wait a second. Let me get this straight. You were going to interview an author, me, who also is your co-host, who also is, to a degree, your boss.
Fully.
You haven't even looked at that book.
This is the first time that I've seen it in person since you published it.
That's fair.
Okay.
What were you laughing at?
The last sentence of your, would you like me to read it out loud? Ask him his favorite day of the week and he'll tell you Friday, which is his second favorite F word.
Okay, yeah.
That was what I was laughing at.
I actually liked that so much I put it on my, I think I added it to my LinkedIn profile. I don't remember.
Love it. Great job with this. Great job in general. I will make sure that we get a nice, good close-up of the cover.
With the wrong color green.
Well, it's always a work in progress. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, starting with the actual title of it?
It's called Profit on Demand, the Creator's Guide to Building a Profitable Business with Print on Demand. Obviously,
we've talked about this over the course of the last few months. You haven't been keeping this a secret. You've been talking about the process.
Oh, the book. I'm sorry. I thought you meant actually like print on demand. I was like, well,
no.
We've actually been talking about this for like 10 years.
Oh my God, have we?
I mean, I've been here 10 years at Lulu, so I've definitely been talking about it for 10 years. We've been talking about it for however long you've been here.
I guess.
And on the podcast, what are we, 2 years in?
2 years.
So,
2 years in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, the book itself, yes. I was teasing it out over the last probably couple of months.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Partially as a way to just keep myself motivated.
I mean, you did. The first episode that we recorded and published this year, we made a deal that we were both going to write and publish a book for the end of this year.
Did we?
One of the two of us kept that promise.
Man, I forgot. You could have got away with it.
If
it weren't for those pesky kids. I forgot all about that.
I am one of the meddlesome kids.
You are, absolutely.
For sure. So we've been talking about this. You've been kind of teasing this out over time, but I thought it would be fun to take an episode to actually kind of like go through the whole process and experience.
You thought it'd be fun to take an episode and torture me for 45 minutes.
Yes, I did.
Why not?
I thought we would have a great time. So I think you should.
Well, we always have a great time.
Well, that's
I
true.
Just don't always like it when it's at my expense. Why not? Let's do it.
Well, you got to get used to this part.
Why?
This is some of the hardest part, by all accounts, of publishing a book, is that you have to get used to talking about it and promoting it and being an extrovert about it.
I was with you till you said extrovert.
I know.
But again, I'll roll with it.
Do you remember watching Justin walk around the like show floor at CEX, just like I mean, that's a level of extroverted that neither one of us is ever going to reach, but it was effective. It did
100%. And by all our access to data that we have for all of our authors and, especially the Tilt Publishing authors, Justin is the highest selling one.
I believe that.
And the amount of business he's getting from his book, for his masterclass and consulting work, stuff like that, it shows from those types of. Now that's not me. I could never do that.
No, I couldn't imagine.
But kudos to him because that's especially if you write a nonfiction book that you're trying to use for a number of different things. Like that is what you got to do. You're right.
Yeah.
But,
well, it's okay. We don't have to get there yet. You got time. You got time before you start doing that. In the meantime, though,
maybe Justin will help me.
Maybe he will. Wasn't he one of your beta readers?
He was, actually.
All right. Well, we're going to come back to that because I want to talk more about that.
Okay.
But why don't you start by telling us about the book?
I'll give you the elevator pitch.
Perfect.
I'm about to read it because I haven't memorized it.
That's okay.
I could wing it, but it's probably not as fun. The short and sweet on my book, the elevator pitch, is that whether you're an artist, a content creator, an aspiring entrepreneur, somebody who just thinks the world needs more raccoon meme merchandise, this book shows you exactly how to build something real in the creator economy and scale beyond what your high school guidance counselor said was ever possible.
I like it.
Yeah. So it's about building something real from your content, from your designs, from your ideas, and doing it in a way where you can spin it up and scale it fast and with little to no upfront costs.
Sounds like something that you know a lot about.
I feel like at this point I do. I mean, I wrote a book on it.
You sure did.
It's probably prudent to note that this book covers all types of print on demand, not just books. It would be very meta if it only covered books.
Right.
I did want to cover all types of print on demand products and processes, and because I'm fascinated with all print on demand, not just books.
Yeah, which is, I mean, something that you've done not just professionally, but also personally. You have explored different print on demand business models before in different ways.
I have.
Are you going to be selling raccoon meme merchandise to go with the book?
No.
Why not?
Because somebody actually already does that. In some of the research I was doing for the book, there is somebody out there who, from what I can tell and what I could find on this particular, I'll call them a creator. Most of what they produce is raccoon meme shirts and mugs, and I think they even had a beach towel or two. Like there really is a market for anybody and everything.
I feel like I can picture exactly what it is, and if I'm right about it, good for them.
Well, I mean, if you can picture that, good for you. Or maybe not. Maybe I should be worried about you.
Yeah. I mean, I do spend a lot of time on the internet, so I have seen a lot of memes.
Can confirm. Yeah.
Okay. So what made you decide to write a book? This is something that we've talked about. Obviously, you just said you've been here for 10 years.
I actually started it years ago for a couple of reasons, but the main one was, as we kept doing what we were doing and I was getting more and more speaking gigs and things, and I felt like, if I'm going to be talking about books all the time and using a book to, reposition yourself or gain more authority or credibility, I should have a book. And when thinking about, okay, well, what book would I write? Well, to me, it was pretty obvious that, I should write a book about what I know, what I'm talking about all the time, and that happened to be, print on demand. So I started it years ago, and then I tabled it because you get busy, and, I don't know. There were times where I would pick it up and I just didn't feel super motivated to work on it. But the motivation really was because I felt like, and still feel like, I just needed more credibility, especially in some circles. When we push outside of traditional publishing circles and we're talking about what we do to other verticals, when we go and talk to another audience that's not a publisher or author audience about print on demand and who we are, like, I think it helps to be able to have some extra credibility there. And so I just felt compelled to write it for primarily that reason. The secondary reason was, I was doing some other print on demand stuff. I do have a couple of other websites and like side businesses, and I'm extremely fascinated by it. And so it was also partly like, internally, like, I want to learn more about this stuff. I want to do more with it. So
that's a really interesting point, because we've talked obviously quite a bit about how books are like an authority builder. And so, you just said that idea about like you wanted to help like more firmly establish your authority in the subject.
Yeah.
But also you wanted the opportunity to learn more about this thing that you were already kind of immersing yourself in. And I think that's absolutely something that we kind of haven't talked as much about it and have overlooked a little bit when it comes to nonfiction book publishing, you are inherently going to become even more of an expert in whatever it is you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you have to actually do research and like process the thoughts of the thing that you're working on and become like articulate about how to explain these things and understand it in a different way.
That's right. And that's where I kept getting stuck, by the way, too.
Yeah.
So, I would get to a point with it, and then, I would go to research something, or there's several case studies in there. They're small ones, but, I would go to start on one of the case studies, and I would just feel completely, overwhelmed with like writer's block and just like, so I would just put it aside again. But, again, it was stuff I wanted to continue learning about print on demand and building businesses using print on demand. And again, not just books. So it was a big part of like, okay, I want to know how to do this, right? I need to know how to do this. And if I'm going to go do all the work and all the research, I might as well add that in. And yeah, it was very helpful that way.
So what's your, like, I guess, main goal for the book in that case? Is it to use it as like, I mean, a lead magnet doesn't seem like the right thing, but it's not to sell 10,000 copies of it either.
No. It really was just because, again, I felt this, not a pressure, but a compulsion to have, a published book under my belt as somebody who works in publishing, who is a massive book nerd, loves and respects books. And then again, as I was doing more speaking and getting in front of people and talking more and more about it, I felt like, this would lend that extra level of credibility to the things that I was talking about, and make people feel a little more comfortable listening to what I had to say, and not feel like, oh, this guy's just up here pitching Lulu,
Yeah.
That I actually had a pretty solid grasp of the print-on-demand ecosystem in general, but specifically as well in books, in book printing.
I think that's something that I've noticed myself trying to do a lot more lately, and I think several people on the team, including you, have been doing this a lot more lately, is kind of emphasizing the, like, we're not just here to, like, shill the company that we work for, but we're also, like, personally interested in and invested in, like, this knowledge and expertise and area. Like, this is something that we feel passionate and interested in general, not just because it's where our paycheck is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for everybody at Lulu. I think we have about 100 to 120 employees roughly. But I do know that for most of our team and a lot of other Lulu employees in general, and especially a lot of our executive team, and we are book nerds. We do love books and anything to do with books, printing books, creating books. So yeah, I think that's helpful as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk through a little bit of the process of getting this book from an idea in your head to a actual literal printed book.
Yeah.
So I already said earlier this year, the first episode that we put out in 2025 was on building a writing habit. And in that episode, we talked a lot about how to go about the practice of writing, how to build a regular writing habit, made this deal that only one of the two of us kept about publishing a book, writing and publishing a book before the end of the year. But, in that episode, as we were talking through a lot of the steps in that episode, we were both kind of like, building a writing habit is hard. Getting in the like practice of writing every day is hard. This is kind of a process. And now here you are, less than a year later, having written and published a book. So how did you get from that? Like, how did you build this writing habit? How did you actually write this book in less than 12 months?
Well, to be fair to you, and in general, for the sake of this conversation, again, I had started it years ago. When I picked back up on it this year, I probably, it's sitting at 188 pages, something like that right now. When I picked back up on it, it probably was about half that, 80 to 90 pages. At the end of the first draft, and I'll get back to your question, a lot of those original 90 pages essentially got stripped out or completely. So I worked with a really wonderful editor. Her name's Kate Brown. A lot of her feedback and some of the beta reader feedback really informed what the final, manuscript looked like. So back to the writing habit, I came into it, I already had 80, 90 pages. So I had a good start on it. I had a good idea already where I was going. I had a good table of contents. I've always said that I suck at table of contents and outlines, like the genesis of, my roadmap. So I went back to ChatGPT with what I had. And because this was started years ago, there was already a ton of stuff that was new and different, and things we've been doing at Lulu or that I was doing with some of my other print on demand stuff too. And I just dumped all that in there, and I was like, give me a new outline here. Like what's the starting point if I want to take what I have now, but I want to make it more current and really, take it to the next level and finish this thing out. And so it spit out an outline that I was pretty fond of. I made a few changes to it, and from there it got infinitely easier for me. So I just tried to focus on if I could get one chapter a week done, and I didn't always meet that. But for me, I can't set a micro goal. It has to be a macro goal. I just told myself I need one chapter a week, right? Based on the outline I had, I knew that if I could get one chapter a week done, I could get this thing cranked out pretty quickly, get it off to Kate, the editor, and all the other things. I think I came close to sticking to that. I do a lot of travel for work, so there were definitely weeks that I didn't do anything with the book because I was traveling and I just didn't. But nonetheless, I think I came close to sticking to one chapter a week. Now, a lot of times that looked like one day that week I spent 3 hours, writing and rewriting. And then other weeks it was, maybe I spent a half an hour here, half an hour there, an hour there, whatever that might be. But I just tried to get a chapter a week done.
I think that's actually a solution that we never considered, because one of the things that we talked about in that like writing habit episode was like, how do you maintain the momentum of writing on a regular basis? And we talked about the idea of setting a daily word count goal, or like writing like a consistent streak of every day, and you don't want to break the streak, or writing for an hour every day. I don't think we ever considered the like one chapter per week goal, and or whatever the goal is, like X amount per week, and whether you choose to do that over 7 days or over 3 days or over 1 day or whatever.
I personally don't do really well with micro goals.
Right.
And I realized that pretty quickly. Like, trying to hit a certain amount of words per day or even a certain amount of words per week versus like just saying, let me just have what I consider a finished chapter. Of course, none of them are finished,
right,
until they go through your editor's hands. But yeah, nonetheless, for me, it was just easier to say, you know what, a chapter is not going to represent 8 pages or 10 pages or 1,000 words or 5,000 words. A chapter is whatever the chapter is when I get done with it. If I feel like this chapter accurately represents whatever that chapter is supposed to be about, I'm going to move on. And I had to do that. I couldn't give myself more micro goals like word counts or daily stuff, or I don't know. It just worked better for me that way.
Well, and it does also then the daily writing goal, or like the word count goals or whatever, does then occasionally and sometimes often land you in the position where you're trashing half of it at the end of it. So like you said earlier, where like a lot of the original stuff got cut. Austin Church said the same thing when we were talking about his experience writing Free Money. He said that he, like, a lot of his original outline turned out that it was more than one book in one outline, and he had to trim a lot of the original content out and narrow it down and narrow focus on that. I think that's an experience a lot of people have. So I think the way you approached it makes a lot of sense.
I did have to go back through. I didn't have to, but I did go back. Like I said earlier, after my editor got a hold of it, after Kate got her hands on it, sent it back. It looked like a bloodbath, and rightly so, by the way. She was awesome. And I did get some feedback from Justin Moore, was a beta reader, and he burned through it fast. His wife also is a creator, and they had already had some, I won't say failed experiments, but some bad experiences trying to use print on demand for another business. And so he had some really good feedback too. And I think ultimately I was originally trying to write it, literally as like a reference book. So I was just making sure everything felt a little more textbook than conversational. And that was a lot of the feedback I got was like, it's fine if you want to create something that somebody can just flip through and get to the information they need because they're in the middle of building a Shopify store. But that doesn't mean you can't soften the edges a little bit. And so I did try to go back through and make it a little more conversational, soften it up a little bit more, put a little bit more of myself into it.
Well, that is something that has to happen that's a decision that a lot of people have to like come to terms with when they're writing a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, is how much of your own voice to put in there.
Yeah.
And you have such a distinct voice. Like,
I don't think it's meant for print.
well, I do. I think that it would be really hard to read a book that was written by you that isn't in your voice.
Well, I mean, I would argue that a lot of that book is and a lot of it isn't, but
Well,
again, I just wanted it to be helpful. Like, I wanted it to be
Yeah.
something where, you know, if you were going to start building an online business for whatever, right? Like Disney churro themed, you know, t-shirts, I wanted you to be able to pick this book up. And if you were in the moment struggling with, you know, how do I choose the right print on demand provider for the best t-shirt blanks that are also available globally in case I have a strong audience in France. I wanted you to be able to pick this book up and flip right to what you needed and not have to weed through a bunch of like, oh, here's another one of Matt's anecdotes, or, oh, here's a whole paragraph of Matt just cussing and you know, I did put some of myself in there for sure, but I tried to just limit the amount of unnecessary words and stories and things that didn't lend to the value of it.
how many ellipses are in there?
I don't know, because Kate caught a lot of them.
Good for her.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into the editing stuff too, but before we get there, I do want to ask how long the whole process took you. I know you said that you'd been working on it already, so you don't have like a complete like inception to publication, but like how many drafts did you go through?
Yeah, that's easy to answer. So I came into it with one draft already. Mm-hmm. And I think that the draft that went for final formatting, proofreading and formatting, was number 6.
Okay.
Yeah. These are full.
Yeah.
I won't say full rewrites. Each draft had a pretty decent amount of changes. So 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
5 from this year and then the initial draft.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, 5 in a year.
Yeah.
Look at you. So to transition that into the editing part of it, at what point in those drafts did you start sharing it? Like, which did you send? Was it the end of the first draft that you sent it to an editor?
No. I think what got sent to Kate was the third draft. So first draft, second. I think the third draft went to Kate. It may have been the second one. And I believe it went to her first. But I started getting a little bit antsy, and she had already funneled a little bit of feedback my way. And so I made a few changes that kind of became draft number 4. That's what I sent off to Justin and a few other beta readers. And then I started getting feedback from them. And by that point, Kate's full edit came through. All of that kind of informed what became draft number 5. Mm-hmm. And then I went through that, had another beta reader look through it, somebody who's in the printing industry, print on demand printing industry. That came back. And then I draft 6 was the final one. Yeah.
I have not been a beta reader, in case anyone who's listening is wondering.
Well, you know, selfishly, you have other things to be doing. And as somebody who managed you, I had to make sure that you were on track.
Yeah,
I needed to make sure this podcast got done every week.
Which sometimes by the skin of my teeth.
Well,
so
you know, hey.
I'll read it I'll add it to my TBR. I'll read it eventually.
Yeah. I mean, at your own risk.
Well, we'll see. I'll bring it back with highlights and notes. So how did you get from that first draft to the third draft? Like, were you self-editing? Were you using tools? Were you like, how did you do that?
From first draft to second, third, fourth, and fifth draft, you know, prior to it going to Kate, my editor, the first draft, again, I knew stuff already needed to be changed. It was a couple years old at that point. A lot of it was still, you know, tried and true and fine because it was a lot of basic print on demand stuff and stuff that doesn't really change a lot. But then there was stuff that was either time boxed or it was, you know, there were references to Twitter in there or just stuff that just didn't even make sense anymore. So I knew that taking draft 1 and just trying to finish that was going to be a waste of effort because I was just going to have to go back through and make all those edits. So technically draft 1, I kind of just took that. That's part of what I fed into ChatGPT and said, you know, here's what I've started. Here's what I know is different. Here's where I'm trying to go. Give me an outline. Mm-hmm. And when I got that new outline back, that's when draft 1 was kind of out the window. I took the stuff I did like from draft one, a lot of the basics that stayed tried and true, and then some of the other stuff I liked. I kind of liked my original intro, and so I kind of stuck with most of that. It's anecdotal. It's about me and my first job at a screen printing place, and how traumatic that was. Draft one got scrapped pretty quick. Draft two started with that new outline. Things started moving fast initially, and I was really enjoying it, getting into it, and I got pretty much what I thought was a full manuscript at that point. I was doing a lot of self-editing, and so, I thought I was looking pretty good by the time I ended up sending my first draft to Kate. I would say, from draft 1 to 2, that took maybe a month and a half, because I was really, really, excited about finishing this thing and getting it published this year. And then from draft 2 to draft 3, that slowed down a little bit because we had a bunch of travel, London Book Fair in March and a bunch of other stuff. I had Justin's event on the heels of London Book Fair, so there was definitely like time where I went weeks and weeks without touching it. So from number 2 to number 3, it took a couple of months at least. But then from there again, at that point I was getting feedback from Kate, I was getting feedback from beta readers. And so from draft 3 on to the final draft, it started picking up again.
I think there is always an element of hurry up and wait in the publishing process. And that also applies to the drafting and writing process too, where it's like, you get this burst of motivation to work on it, or you have the time, or you have the, like you just got feedback from somebody, and while it's fresh in your head, you want to go through and make those changes. And then it kind of peters off for a little while, and then you pick it back up again. And I think that's a reasonable approach to doing things. Sometimes clearly it worked for you.
Yeah. I mean, and again, for me, micro goals don't work great. And, motivation comes in all different forms. There were times where, I wasn't traveling, but I also just wasn't feeling super motivated. I was in that state where, I knew there was work to be done, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't excited about it. But then something would happen, or I would talk to somebody who was struggling with, something that was a concept in my book. And I would be like, oh my God, I wish I had this done. I could just give them a copy of this book, instead of just saying, hey, I'm writing about motivation would come in different ways or would be triggered in different ways. And I don't know. I think it all just kind of worked out this year, where the combination of making progress, I think, like tangible progress that you feel good about, really helps you stay locked in. But again, I'm in an environment where this topic is fairly regular. So I would get triggered at times by something somebody was saying or doing or struggling with. And it would be like, oh, I need to finish this. Like, I got to get this done. This is ridiculous.
Is there anything that, I'm sorry, I'm deviating from the questions I told you I was going to ask.
It's okay.
But one of the things that I really like about the medium of podcasting is that we can kind of pivot as we're going, or like we could have a conversation with somebody at a conference and say, oh, you know what, that'd be a really good episode topic. And then next week go record that episode and publish that and add that to our list of topics.
Right.
But a book, like, this is kind of like, there is a deadline for, like, you can't add new content to this. Like, you can't just like suddenly add a new chapter after talking to one person at a conference one time. Did you find that to be a different creative experience, for like, you had to draw the line somewhere and be like, okay, I can't keep adding new ideas or new things to this?
Yes, you're right. You and I get the benefit of being able to just throw a new podcast topic up whenever we want. Honestly, with this though, I didn't feel that compulsion very often. Once I had a really good outline, like I felt like that outline really was all encompassing of what I was trying to do with this book. And so I really didn't feel the need very often to want to push those boundaries out more. If anything, I just struggled with keeping the chapters tight and concise. I mean, there were certainly topics already in there where I could go off on lots of tangents, or like we talked about earlier, I could have put more of my own experiences in there and balloon those chapters out. But one of the things I don't like about nonfiction books, and I read a lot of them, is that oftentimes that's what you're getting. You're getting like one or two helpful little nuggets of wisdom or whatever learnings that this particular person had. And then you're just getting a lot of fluff. not that people don't have interesting stories and anecdotes and lessons learned, and sometimes they're good, but most people don't write about them very well, and oftentimes I feel like they're used just to fill pages, and I didn't want to do that. So I didn't struggle with wanting to add on more and more chapters or topics, or I felt that I had a really good outline, which again I think helped me finish it. But I did struggle at times with keeping those chapters tight and not adding extra stuff in there. There's a few chapters where I felt like, oh, this is a little light, but I felt like I made the point I wanted to make. So it was a struggle sometimes to not add more, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to move on. And if I get feedback from Kate or from one of the beta readers that like, this seems too light, then I will. But otherwise, if the point's made, I'm just going to move on.
So the differences between your various drafts of it were mostly like refining and not necessarily adding whole new sections of content?
Yes. Very rarely did I add a whole new section of content. There were times where, based on feedback from a beta reader or even Kate, where it was like, I think this is either too much inside baseball and we need to kind of redo this, or I think you need to build out this concept a little more. In other words, I don't know that the reader is going to fully grasp what you're trying to say. I think you need to spend a few more words on this particular thing, like, or add to for the sake of making sure the value is added. So yeah, it was a lot of refining and then some addition by subtraction to a degree.
So I want to ask about the beta readers. So I want to say that out loud so I can hopefully remember to come back to it. But I want to set that up by asking about your audience. And that is something that we've talked a little bit about in other episodes, but to the point that you just made about this being a little bit too inside baseball or whatever.
Yeah.
This is an introductory level book or not. This is, who's your target audience for this?
Yeah. If there was anything I struggled with the most, it was going back and forth because this book started as, like, here's an introduction, how to build a business using print on demand, because at the end of the day, it's actually not super complicated. There are a lot of steps, there's a lot of things, but it's not rocket science. And so that was the initial goal, just like the title says, right? I wanted any creator, and I really was thinking, young, right? Like, I wanted my kids to be able to take this book because they're all creative, they're all artists. I have a 20-year-old who's a tattoo artist. My twins, they're very creative. They like to make art and do things, and I wanted people of their age to be able to take this book and somewhat grasp it. But I really wanted to make sure that, a lot of the creators that are out there right now that still fall into that range, I would say of like 18, 19, 20 up to like 35, 40-ish max. But then as I started writing, I would get into it, and I was putting more, I think, advanced stuff in there, getting into things about how to create your LLC and what an S corp is, and taxes, and then later on down the road how you would go about negotiating licensing rights, and getting into really deeper concepts around how to scale a business, not just how to build a business, but how to scale it. And so I'd get feedback like, well, you're kind of all over the place here. Like, who are you talking to? Who's your audience? Are you talking to beginner, intermediate, advanced? Like, you got to rein this back in. And so ultimately, I think I landed on somewhere from the beginner to intermediate stage. I did pull out some of the more advanced stuff. I don't know why I went down some of those paths, to be honest with you. I think part of it was, like I said, I was also learning some things in the process. And I was already at the point where I did want to know some of that advanced stuff. And I think by proxy, I just felt like it should go in there. And I think the biggest thing that Kate also really helped me with, my editor, was that it was just a constant reminder, like, remember who your audience is. Slow down. Like, this doesn't belong in there. That's too, you know what I mean? So I think constantly having to go back and remember my audience, the people I'm talking to, they are beginners, maybe some intermediates. These are creative people. These are entrepreneurs. These are people who want to build a business with very little startup capital. They don't want a garage full of inventory. They have access to creative resources. They're into the idea of owning something that's theirs and their own audience. And I just had to keep going back to that and remembering that every time I was putting something new in the book.
We kind of did that same thing with the workbook that we did for CEX and then also reused for Momentum, where the steps of how to publish a book, there are some of those sections that get really, really granular. Yes. And it was definitely one of those things that, like, as we were going through the process of writing it, that was like, oh, well, like I mentioned in passing that now is a really good time to finalize your metadata, but we haven't explained what metadata is. And then we have to go down the slippery slope of explaining what that is. And none of that was actually like appropriate for like an introductory summary on how to, but it does become that slippery slope of how do you explain this without explaining this? And how do you mention this?
That's right.
And you have to figure out where to draw the line.
Yeah. One of the examples was in the book. I started going down the path of talking about, sales nexus. So, collecting sales tax and how, what it means to hit nexus and things like that. But the way that I was doing it, I was using words like nexus and stuff like that, but I hadn't explained what any of that was or meant yet and didn't realize that. And that's one of those things where it ended up being, you know what, I'm actually just going to remove that. I'll talk about the basics of what you got to do to make sure the IRS doesn't come beating your door down, on your very first Shopify store. But I'm going to remove that stuff. That was stuff good for me to learn. And again, it was just an example of too much insider baseball or just, not, again, paying attention to who my audience was, losing track of that.
Yeah. So then to go back to the beta readers, then how did you choose who you were going to ask in terms of like, were you trying to choose people that could intentionally give you certain insight into the book, whether they were people that were writers and could give you that insight or people that were familiar with print on demand or whatever? How did you go about choosing who you asked to be a beta reader?
Yeah, I on two things. Either they had a background in what I was writing about and I felt like they would understand it and potentially be able to add some good value there, like say, hey, you know what? I don't know, whatever. Like, actually, this concept is a little out of date. Like, we use this now, or whatever. Or it was somebody who would have been in my target audience. People like Justin Moore, target audience, and already had a bit of an understanding about print on demand. But he and his wife are target audience for me, so I knew I would get good feedback from him. I also knew it was something he would be interested in, so I wasn't sure how fast he'd get through, because at that point, it was still a pretty gnarly manuscript. Like, there hadn't been many refinements done yet, and it was still that more like textbook style, pretty heavy, and a lot of his feedback was like, put more of yourself in here. But so he was in that category of like, he was demographics for me. But then I had, other beta readers who were in the print on demand industry, not even books per se, like they work in other areas of print on demand or in printing. So it was a mixture of those two. I didn't have any beta readers, for the sake of like writing stuff, style, tone, stuff like that. I relied mostly on Kate for that.
And how'd you find Kate? How'd you find, like, was she a developmental editor or kind of like where did she come from in the editing process?
So I did some of this in conjunction with Tilt Publishing because the resources were there, obviously, and I know that team, and they all do an amazing job. Kate was doing editing and proofreading mostly proofreading, but some editing for Tilt Publishing. And so, I knew Kate. I also knew her style. I also know that outside of that type of work, I know what kind of stuff she reads. I know what kind of person she is. And I thought she would be a great fit for my book. Thankfully, I was right. But yes, initially it's because she did, a lot of work for Tilt Publishing.
So you did do some work with outside sources on this one, working with people from Tilt Publishing.
Yeah.
Or working with some other designers or creators. You did not, this was not a completely solo endeavor.
No.
Which we have absolutely talked about in the past. Is not, just because you can do it all by yourself doesn't mean that you should.
Agreed.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
So what parts of the publishing process did you outsource? Like, where did you get help, or what did you do on your own?
I mean, other than writing it, everything else was outsourced. Cool. So, again, I had an editor. She did a fantastic job. I had beta readers that helped me. I used Tilt Publishing resources for cover design, interior design, formatting and layout. Yeah, I mean, every other aspect of it. I didn't really get my hands back on it or into it until it was ready to go to the printers for proof copies. In which case, I know the printers, obviously. It's us. It's me. Hi. We're the printers.
Really? You know a book printer?
I do. I actually went to Massachusetts to pick up the proof copies myself.
Yeah, you did.
Well, other than this one was a test copy. But yeah, so I outsourced pretty much everything outside of writing it.
What was the process like when it came to the cover design and I guess the book design in general? Because that was something we did that episode recently where we talked about like, what do you do when you get your cover design back and you hate it? You did come, so like a month ago, maybe we were in the office and Matt came up to my desk with a stack of papers. We should have brought those in here. That would have been fun.
Oh yeah.
A whole stack of paper and put them all down on my desk. And it was like 12 different variants of cover designs.
Not quite 12, but it was a bunch.
Well, it was definitely because it was like at least 3 different designs and then multiple color palettes for each of those designs.
There were 3 different designs.
Yeah.
And there were multiple color palettes for each of them. You're correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that? Can you talk us through what
that was probably
was like?
Actually the easiest and funnest part.
Yeah.
To be fair, I already had experience working with these SAR designers and I know the process. And then also I took our own advice. So I had a lot of fun going around to bookstores and taking pictures of book covers that I really liked. And then obviously some on my bookshelves at home too. So by the time it was the point where I needed to essentially give them my mood board, for lack of a better term, I had all these pictures of book covers that I really liked, and I would upload those and I would talk to Ashley and tell her, why I liked each one, what I liked about it. And I think that made it really easy. She's a great designer, and if you're working with a great designer and you give them a lot of direction up front, chances are your first round of mock-ups are probably going to be pretty good. And the biggest problem you're going to have is going to be choosing between them, which is what I had. It was hard to choose of those 3 designs because they were all really good. Ashley and Alex both. Alex also worked on a couple designs too, and I ultimately went with one that Ashley did. The funny thing is the cover that I sent her that I think had the most impact on the design was on a whim. I was in Portland and I was in Powell's bookstore. Yep. I was in the coffee shop in the bookstore waiting on my coffee and just happened to turn around, and that's where some of the nonfiction books were, and there was a book there. And the cover immediately, I was just like, oh my God, it's the coolest cover. So I snapped a picture and sent it to her right away. Her response basically was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you sent this because this is almost identical to the one I'm about to send you. Yep. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So the cover process was actually the easiest and most fun. But I think it is because I gave them everything I could to help them understand what I thought I was looking for. And ultimately, I got pretty close to what in my head I thought I wanted my cover to look like. It doesn't always go that way, obviously, but I thought it went pretty smoothly. I do think I love that anecdote because I do think that's something that people don't do as often as they should when it's like trying to figure out what they want for their cover design. Like, I think that is actually exactly the right thing to do. Literally just go walk into a bookstore and just kind of like meander without purpose and see what catches your eye. And like, don't overthink it. Just snap a picture of it and then look at it later and go, what was it about this that caught my eye? Like, what was like when there's this many books, I mean, bookstores these days, books and other things, there's such a stimulation overload that like, if something catches your eye enough that you like, it draws you over to it, it's worth paying attention to what that is and what the reason is. And if you can put together 5 or 6 different elements of that, maybe you can make a book cover out of that. Yeah, I agree. There was a little back and forth on, colors and some other stuff. But, again, as long as you've set that up really well on the front end and you're quick with your feedback and you're delivering that feedback in a way that's productive, it goes very fast. So, yeah. I mean, I think you landed on a great one. I think this was the one that I said I liked the best. It was. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very eye-catching. It was hard. The other one I really liked was one that Alex did, and it was the one where all of those things look like pieces from a model kit that you would But I was just too worried that, younger people reading the book wouldn't understand. They wouldn't get that connection. Like my age, I built model kits when I was a kid, so I knew what it meant to have this plastic thing, and then all the little pieces are attached by a little and you're snapping them off, and that design concept was really cool and clever, but I didn't think that people would quite understand what it was. And I didn't want there to be any questions of that. So, which is an important thing to understand too. I think that is something that it's another version of Kill Your Darlings, which is something that I have a hard, very, very hard time with. So, I'm It is hard.
No shade or shame to anybody that struggles with that. But like, sometimes you get really hung up on an idea that sounds really great, but you have to remember who is your audience. Just because you love this idea doesn't mean that your audience is going to get it or resonate with it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so that is important to recognize when that's happening.
I think that's the one constant through this whole thing was, you know, again, just continually reminding myself like who my audience was. Yeah. You know, whether it was through writing or even the cover. Like the cover is a really personal thing. Like nonfiction, I think the writing is not always as personal as maybe fiction. Maybe sometimes more. It just depends on what you're writing. I was more invested in the cover, honestly, because I knew it was important to get it right. Mm-hmm. It was fun, but it is hard sometimes. Yeah.
Well, it is even like, you know, just from a marketing perspective and from your experience with not just book publishing, but just marketing in general. I mean, you know, realistically that you're going to be putting this book cover literally next to your face and your name in like you're going to be at conferences, at sessions, and like showing this to people. And it's going to be, I mean, one of the first things that I thought about when I looked at this was the photo that you've been using as your headshot for years, mm-hmm. which is a very bold, bright color palette in that. And this book goes with it. It doesn't match it because there isn't green in that photo, but it does like it. It's good. It's not going to clash mm-hmm. next to your headshot.
Sure.
And you know, that's an insane thing to think about, except for the fact that it's not like.
Yeah. I think given my purpose for this book and what it is something you should think about. It is an example of those small details that sometimes I think, not sometimes, that are oftentimes overlooked, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you did a good job with it.
Thanks.
So what was the hardest part, do you think?
I think the hardest part was probably going through those last couple of versions. I expected when that first round came back from Kate, I expected that to be a bloodbath. I really did. Like, so my ego wasn't hurt. I was still a little bit taken aback by just how much. Mm-hmm. But again, I expected a lot. It just made me feel overwhelmed all over again. Like, oh shit, okay. And so you're back at it, you know, it can be overwhelming when you're going page by page and you have all these changes that are being suggested. And, you know, there are times where it's like, no, actually I meant this to be this way, and that's fine. But, you know, a lot of it is you're making these changes because if you have trust in your editor and you have a good editor, then, I mean, that's the point. Like, you should take those suggestions and make them because they're giving you a very objective set of feedback. But it still was hard sometimes, especially if I made a change and it didn't change the context necessarily of that particular paragraph or chapter, but it may have changed how it flowed. And so I felt the need to then go back and, you know, kind of restructure the whole paragraph or the whole chapter sometimes. So yeah, I think the hardest part was the revising, not even the writing of the initial, you know, getting that cranked out to that first full draft to hand over. I don't even think that was terribly hard. Just time consuming. It was
like the really like the fine tuning.
Yes,
that's
because it's just constantly going back in, and you know, then I'd get another set of feedback from a beta reader that was straggling behind. I was like, oh, actually, that's a great point. Shit, I have to go back in, and you know, and then it's like, oh, well, now should I send this back to Kate for a whole nother, you know? And every time you send the full manuscript to your editor, that's money. That's a cost. So yeah, it was the revisions. It was the fine tuning, like you said, from that initial full complete draft to number 6, the one that made it.
How'd you know when you were done?
Gosh. You know, I think I just got to a point where I was like, I feel good with this. Mm-hmm. I don't feel great with it. I don't know if you ever will, but I feel good about it. Yeah, I think I just got to a point where I felt good about it. I felt like, you know, if I read this book or if I bought this book, I would feel good about that purchase. I would feel like I learned some things. And so I told myself that when I felt good with it and I was ready, then I was going to write a dedication for my kids, and then that was it. So in my head, I knew that once I wrote the dedication to my kids, I couldn't do anything else. It was done. And so that's what I did. And that's what stopped me from picking at it or messing with it anymore. To this day, there are things, even now as we talk about it,
Sure, yeah.
there are things I'm thinking about like, I probably should have, but whatever. It's done. It's out there in the world. And if I feel like it, I can do a revised edition, or I can just move on and use it for what it's worth and probably write something else at some other point.
Are you going to write something else at some point?
I'm going to write probably some dystopian Amish romance.
Sure, why not?
Maybe with a little
vampire Amish romance.
I was going to say a little vampire twist.
Okay.
Maybe some fantastical New World type stuff. Probably a big, huge map in the front and a big, huge character tree in the back, so we can.
I thought you were going to say phantasmic, and I was like, okay, now I'm paying attention. Hold on.
I would like to write another book. It would probably be nonfiction.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe one day I'll crack open that doc. Yeah,
I guess I could finish that one since I've already written 4 or 5 chapters of it.
I'll help you. You just got to give me like another month or two, and then we'll revisit that.
So
I got some other projects that I gotta get.
2026 goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are getting to that time of year where we got to start making New Year's resolutions. So,
All right. Well, we'll see.
When you do, because I think that books are like tattoos, where once you get one, it's a slippery slope.
It might be.
I think this is going to be your first, but not your last.
It might be the new tattoos for me because I'm officially out of body space.
I mean, technically, you still got a little bit of face left.
No, never. So maybe this is my new tattoos.
Okay.
Is books.
All right. Well, when you get around to writing your next one, is there anything that you're going to do differently, or do you think the process went pretty smoothly?
Yes. I think that I would probably... I think I messed up by sending manuscript copies to beta readers somewhat overlapping at the same time that Kate had the first version. I think that wasn't the right thing to do. I would either do it one way or the other, either send it to the beta readers first or send it to, I'm sure I would use Kate again, but send it to the editor first, one or the other. I think I messed up by doing that because that really messed me up as I was, I was taking feedback from some of the beta readers, and then I was also dealing with Kate's first round, which was a bloodbath, and I think it got very overwhelming. And yeah, so next time I definitely would do those one at a time in terms of beta readers versus editor. Outside of that, I don't know if there's anything else I would do differently, not off the top of my head. All things considered, I think it went pretty smooth and pretty easy. It really helps when you do have a good team of designers and editors, and obviously I'm fortunate I had access to those. And, quite frankly, anybody can get access to them. It's just a matter of cost and or interviewing and finding the right fits. So again, I had the good fortune to know like the designers I was working with and the editor. Right. But yeah, I don't think I would change anything else, at least not so far, but we're a couple of weeks into the release. So that answer might change in a couple of months.
It is always a learning experience. It's a never ending learning experience.
Yeah.
But no, I think that makes sense. And I think that is such a valid point that there are, obviously you had inside access to a lot of resources, but all you really did was know where to look. Like technically there wasn't anything that you had access to that anybody listening to this could not also have access to. These resources are all available. Maybe the specific people that you were working with may not be offering freelance work. Maybe they are. I don't know. The resources to help you get this done are all readily available to people. It's just a matter of knowing where to look, knowing how to pick the right one for you and the right one for your budget.
No, that's fair.
And building the right team.
Yeah.
So we will definitely drop some resources in the show notes for this episode. The most important one being a link to buy Matt's book or to check it out if you want to. This episode does come out on Matt's birthday. So you could give him a nice birthday present of giving his book some engagement or just saying hi in the comments, whichever you'd prefer.
As people are listening to this episode at first drop date, it is my birthday?
Yes.
So, okay. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to future Matt. But yes, the day this episode comes out is your birthday.
Got it.
So, yeah, leave us a comment, leave us a review, say happy birthday to Matt. Congratulate him on officially being a published author and the first of the two of us to be a published author. So that's pretty cool.
I beat you.
You sure did.
That was my true real goal.
I went to grad school for this and it's been a decade and you still beat me.
And there's a reason why you're a professional yapper, though.
Sure is. Sure
Get
is.
sidetracked easy.
Yeah, that's true.
I use that to my advantage.
Yeah, you just sidetrack. You know how to sidetrack me. But I think this is awesome. I'm really excited for you. I can't wait to read it. And I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thanks.
Yeah. So if you want to check it out, please do. We'll put the link in the show notes. If you don't want to check it out, but you want to ask us questions, you want to ask Matt questions, you want to learn more about any of the things we talked about here, you can send us an email, podcast@lulu.com.
Mm-hmm.
You can reach out to us on Lulu Social, on YouTube, and wherever else you listen to your podcasts.
Yep.
So thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another new episode.
Later.
To learn more about this episode, check out the show notes on publishprosperpodcast.com. Publish and Prosper is brought to you by Lulu.com. To hear more episodes like this one, please like and subscribe wherever you listen. Thanks for tuning in.